guys, it's Erica Galinas from Century 21 Affiliated, Northwest Indiana's Golden Girl. Happy to talk to you guys again this week. Wanted to go over something for the seller side. I know I've been doing a lot of buyer stuff lately. I want to make sure the sellers have their questions answered as well. A lot of agents will tell you we could do a free CMA, a current market analysis. We could find out what your home's worth, and they totally can. That's absolutely a thing. The more important part of the equation for most people that are thinking they're selling is, awesome, my house is worth $1 billion. What's going to be left over when we're done? So agents have a really simple way to do it. And if your agent isn't providing this to you, either find another agent or ask them why. It is called, we call it a net sheet. This one, estimated seller's proceeds. Basically, it is a list of all the different things that you're more than likely going to run into in a transaction. It covers everything from commissions, title work, tax credits, seller's closing costs. Like, there's all kinds of things to work out this math. I have heard of some agents who don't provide this to their clients, and I don't know why. Every company usually has their own form that they use with different disclosures and things on it. I know there's a basic form provided by the Indiana Association of Realtors that's available to agents. So if for some reason you don't get one, you may want to question that and find another agent. But here's what the form will tell you. So what'll happen is I have you do two different kinds basically. One, you sit down with a client and you say, okay, we can sell your house for $300,000. Here's all the comps and here's how we came up with this number. You know, I would recommend a range between 280 and 320. What do you think? The second part of that conversation is, okay, so let's say we sell it for $300,000. Here's what you're gonna net at the end of all of it. An estimated number, but a pretty close estimate. So the first thing that's on here, it says, my copy says encumbrances, but that means liens. That means your mortgage. That means if you have a judgment lien for some medical bill that needs to be paid. Maybe if you have divorce in your past and you have to give your ex-spouse, $14,000 from the proceeds or something like that. That is all taken right off the top. That's another reason why it's important to share with your agent as close as you can get payoff of your mortgage. I know some people are hesitant to do that because they consider it private. Here in the Midwest, we're pretty tight-lipped about our money situation. You absolutely have to share that with your agent in order to have an accurate net sheet. She or he is not going to tell the buyers, or they're not going to put it on Facebook or anything like that. But it's important that you share it with them so they can give you some solid numbers. Right off the top, mortgages, liens, anything you know about, just so there's no surprises down the road. Then we get into the costs of selling your home. Obviously, the big one is commissions, and we'll talk about that. But the first thing you have to know is that when you sell your home, you have to give your buyer tax credits. So how it works in most counties in Indiana, and I think Illinois and possibly most of the country, is that when you make a property tax payment, let's say you have a tax payment due in November of 2018, which is coming up, in a couple months, that money actually is applied to 2017 taxes. They call that tax payment in arrears, is what it's called. So the property tax payments you've made so far in 2018 actually pay 2017 taxes. So for most typical real estate transactions, you have to give your buyer credit for the taxes that are unpaid, okay? So you will have, let's say we're closing tomorrow, so you'll have a tax credit to the buyer of your regular November 2018 payment, because that goes back to 2017. You're also going to have to give them a tax credit for January 1st, 2018 through the closing date, which is, what is today, the September 27th. So there's a very easy way to do a calculation, it's just math, where you give them a tax credit not only for the payment we know about for 2017, but also for all the time in 2018 that you've lived in the house and the buyer didn't. I mean, that's fair. You need to pay the taxes when you live there. Just because the bill isn't due until 2019 doesn't mean that you don't have to pay it. So that's the first part of this. That's absolutely something that has to be done. In most normal real estate transactions, like I say, everything is negotiable. Things are a little different with new construction and stuff like that. But if you're in one of those special situations, your agent should be able to explain all that to you. So that comes off the top, your real estate taxes for the current year and for last year in arrears. Special assessments comes up occasionally if you live in a condo or someplace, a townhome community with an HOA. That's pretty unusual though, but it works the same way. If there's a special assessment against the property paid in the future for repairs done now, you would give a credit in the same way that you would for your taxes. Title work. Okay, so title work, and I'll probably go into this in more detail in another video, but title work is something that, again, you need to provide to your buyer. It tells them that A, you're the proper owner of the house and there's nothing weird on the title, some deed that never got recorded. It'll tell you about all the liens on the property. So if there is something weird that pops up on there, you'll have a full picture of what needs to be paid off. Then the other thing is title insurance. Okay, so the insurance part is basically just, like health insurance or car insurance. If something goes wrong in the future with the transaction that's taking place today, and the title company missed it, the seller missed it, the buyer missed it, somebody missed it, you pay a small amount for title insurance. So instead of having to, pick up a $87,000 judgment lien that got missed by the title company, they will take care of it. Title insurance is pretty inexpensive. I mean, I think for up to, say a $200,000 house, you're paying like $700. So title insurance is required with that and appears on the net sheet. Recording costs / attorney's fees. All the documents, there's a sales disclosure with the county and there's a deed that needs to be recorded. The county charges money to record those things, like Porter, Jasper, Newton, whatever county you're in. They're going to charge you something, usually about $50, maybe closer to $70, depending on exactly what you're filing, to get all that recorded. So that's going to be something that's paid out. And then somebody has to prepare a deed. An attorney has to prepare a deed transferring the property from you to the buyer. So that's all in there. Again, that's usually about $50. That comes off the top as well. Other title company stuff, there's usually a transaction fee. Most transactions are actually closed at the title company, and they use what we call a closer to do all the paperwork and process it and sign here and check ID, stuff like that. So there's usually a transaction fee. The company I work with most of the time charges about $300 for that transaction fee per side. Usually, real estate closing, they split it 50-50. So that's included on here as well. There's other small charges. The state requires I think it's a $5 payment to what they call the TIF fund, which is some kind of fund that reimburses people for different things that happen. There's a closing protection letter that has to be filed with the state. They charge $25 for that. All that runs through kind of your title charges, but those are all things that'll appear on the net sheet. So again, $800 for, this thing, for $5 for this thing. These are good estimates, and they should all appear in here to give you a big picture of what all that title work costs. Commissions are on here. Mine is always broken down between the cost to the buyer and the seller, because traditionally in Indiana, the seller pays all the commissions, buyer side as well. So this is broken up between the two. Obviously, the buyer's agent has a different kind of job than the seller agent in terms of marketing and paperwork and stuff like that. So your commissions, your full commissions, because usually they're pretty straightforward. It's a percentage of what you're selling it for. There shouldn't be any, subterfuge about what the commission is. That appears right here on the sheet. So there shouldn't ever be any question about what the commission is going to be. If you have an agent who's kind of weaselly on the commission and, I'm not sure, you need to immediately fire your agent and find a different one. Commissions are commissions. They are all contract bound. There should never be any questions at any time about who's getting paid what. It should appear on this net sheet, and if it doesn't, walk out the door and find somebody else. The other thing that appears on here is closing costs. A lot of times buyers ask sellers to pay part of their closing costs. If you've negotiated that into your transaction, which is totally normal at this point, that should go on here as well, because that's going to come off your bottom line. It should be counted in there. Also, if they've asked you to do a survey, a home warranty, if they've asked you to pay for, a septic inspection, something like that, all that math should be on the sheet, and there's plenty of blanks for others at the bottom, so there's no reason not to include any of these costs. If you're doing one preliminarily, when you first put it on the market, we don't really know, obviously, what people are going to ask for, what kind of negotiations are going to go on. So those things might be left off in the beginning. But obviously, when you have an offer, you should have a more detailed one with all that specific stuff in there. There's some stuff in here. Repairs, if you know that somebody's going to ask you to, make up something, replace the carpeting, and it's going to cost $1,000, that can certainly be added on here. A lot of agents, myself included, throw in $100 for like miscellaneous, because we may calculate tax credits because we're closing on October 10th. We actually close on October 12th. So that's going to be, a couple extra $8 or $9 in taxes that go one way or the other. So you just pay it on $100 for miscellaneous. Because the important thing, we don't use this sheet to try to convince you to use us to be your agent. The purpose of the net sheet is to let you know, as close as we possibly can, what you're going to end up with at the end. And sometimes that calculation is, the difference between $41,000 and $42,000, which is, important, but not the end of the world. But sometimes that difference is you getting $500 at the closing table, or you paying $500 at the closing table. These estimates, and they're all estimates, but they need to be pretty close. They need to include all the things that are anticipated in a transaction. And if you feel like your agent is being, not forthcoming, isn't answering your questions, there's some kind of issue with the money, again, find another agent, because there's no reason why any of this stuff should be under question. So that's it. So you get your sales price, you get your encumbrances, i.e. mortgages, and then you have your list of all the things that are in there, and at the end, you have your estimated total. So now here's a very important point. Nobody can see the future. Nobody knows, there may be a difference in a closing date. There may be something like that. These are all estimated numbers. They should be pretty damn close to what it's actually going to be, but they are estimates. So when you get to closing, you're going to have all the actual math, because you'll have the exact closing date, you'll have the exact mortgage payoff, all of that stuff. So when you sit at the closing table, you will have the exact number, hopefully 3 or 4 days ahead of time, as a matter of fact, because that's how it should work. Once you get to that point, it's easy enough to do the math. But when you sit at the closing table, you're going to have a whole 3 pages of paper with all the details of all the things. The number on that paper should be close to this number. If it is off by, several $1,000s, you should stop the closing and talk to your agent and say, hey, wait a minute, what happened? Because there should be it may not be a simple answer, but it should be a very, obvious answer as to what changed. Maybe the tax calculations were wrong. Maybe your mortgage payoff was much more than you thought it was. Maybe, there was some issue with a repair issue, an inspection issue, something like that. If there's that big of a difference, again, these are estimated numbers, but they should be pretty darn close. So if you get into a situation at closing where they're off by a lot, stop the closing, ask, what's going on? Hey, the one I signed said that it would be $3,000. Now this closing statement you're putting in front of me says it's going to be $8,000. Where is this $5,000 difference coming from? You have every right to stop a closing, up until the point everything's signed and stamped and everybody's out the door. So if you have those kind of questions, absolutely ask the questions. It may not be an answer you're happy with. It may be an answer like, hey, you said your mortgage payoff was $150,000. Turns out it's $160,000, and we didn't know about that until last week. And then you deal with it, which deal with. But if there is something, and again, it doesn't have to be something shady going on. It could just absolutely be a mistake, because everybody is human. But if you see a big discrepancy in those estimates, then you need to stop and ask your agent what's going on. When we use these, like I said, we use them most often 2 times. When you first are taking a listing. So again, you go through all the comps. Hey, I think we can sell it for anywhere between $300,000 and $350,000. I put together 2 or 3 net sheets, general ones, calculated the taxes, did those kinds of things. Here's one for $300,000, $320,000, and $340,000. Just to give you kind of a general idea what that bottom line is. Hopefully your agent won't be coming to you with a range of $50,000 in listing price, but sometimes you are, uncertain depending on the neighborhood and stuff. So you bring, 2 or 3 at different prices. So again, you have a full understanding of what you're getting involved in when you do a listing. The second time, and you should always see this, every time you get an offer, whether it's the crappiest lowball offer, whether it's something crazy, whether it's, literally anytime you get an offer, your agent is required by law to present an offer to you. They should always bring a net sheet with the specifics of that offer. Because like I said, there's things in here that only come up when you've negotiated an offer. Closing costs, ask for a septic inspection, ask for $1,000 for carpeting or whatever it is. Every time you get an offer from an agent, they should have a net sheet. Like I said, this form, every company, I think, has them. There's a generic one available for the Indiana Association of Realtors. If your agent shows up without a net sheet with an offer, you say, hey, awesome, thanks. Why don't you come back in a half an hour with a net sheet? Because guess what? I need to be fully aware of how this offer is going to impact me financially. Again, they're estimated numbers, but they should be darn close. So your agent should easily be able to provide a completed net sheet for each offer that you have. And if they haven't, you need to stop them and tell them that you need it. It's absolutely your right to have one as a seller, and it's not particularly difficult to do. So, like I said, I've heard of agents that don't provide them. I don't understand why, because it's not a big deal. It doesn't necessarily mean anybody's doing anything wrong or there's something shady going on. Might have forgotten, might just be a mistake. We get busy, we're human like everybody else. If you get an offer, you need a net sheet with it so you can see what's going on. So hopefully that answers some of the questions. Like I said, it's easy to get a CMA and find out what your house might sell for, but it's not, again, not difficult, but you don't always get this net sheet when you talk to an agent, and you need to get that net sheet. That's that. If you guys have any questions about some of the details of this, I know my clients will recognize this because this is the one I use for all of theirs. If you have, or questions about what else can be on here, or why is that on there, anything like that, let me know. Call me, text me, 219-765-2062. Comment or private message me here in this video, or you can always hit my website, homesalesbyerica.com, Facebook page, Home Sales by Erica. Makes sense. Next time, I think we're going to talk about commissions next time, so that'll be pretty exciting. I know it's something that people are shy to talk about, and I really kind of want to crack that open. So I think next week, tune in, and we'll have kind of an interesting conversations about commissions. If you have any other questions, like I said, I'd love to do a CMA for you. I'd love to do a net sheet for you so you can see what it actually means. If you get this, it doesn't mean you have to list. It's just for informational purposes, so don't be afraid, to ask me for one. And I will see you guys next week. Again, what questions do you have? Buyer, seller, investor, lakefront property, anything you want. I'm happy to answer them. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.